So, ladies and gentlemen, it was a long weekend for me. How was your weekend? Mine was full of, well, the PA, because the PA was in Nelson Mandela Bay celebrating its world's anniversary. Now, I got invited to a lot of the events, and so I went to a lot of them in order to bring you, ladies and gentlemen, some content and actually tell you about what the PA actually had to say in Nelson Mandela Bay. Before you accuse me of being a PA shill, at least the PA invited me. I mean, that's more than the ANC or MK or even the DA do in some respects. So in any case, let's get on to it. But before we do, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help. So let's get on to it. So I actually started off my PA experience on Friday morning. Because on Friday morning, there was a golf game, a golf day, if you will, that was arranged for the PA. And this was obviously to raise funds for the PA, of which I got invited to. So if I went with a few friends, Gayton McKenzie was there, and yes, Gayton McKenzie actually played golf. Now, there wasn't really an opportunity to do much with the PA or talk to the PA. The PA were there, but obviously everybody got segmented off. Now, very interestingly enough, Gayton did give a very short speech at the start of it, which he said that actually all those years ago when he was a convict and he was doing criminal activity, he never once dreamed that one day he would be reformed and standing there hosting a golfing event for a political party and to be strongly pushing for political change in the country. That was all then followed up by a dinner evening which Rob Hersoff arranged. Rob Hersoff arranged a meeting of, if you want, white capitalists, business owners, and they invited Gayton McKenzie to come speak at the event. I got invited along as a representative of Morning Shot in order to, well, hear what Gayton had to say. And what Gayton actually had to say was rather interesting. He said, in the first instance, he says, he's not there to ask for these white capitalists to give him money. He said, I'm not here for your money, I'm not even here for your vote. But what he did ask of them was very clear, and he asked them to do one of three things. The first was, if you're employing a foreigner in your business, get rid of the foreigner, especially if they're illegal. He said, I know numerous ones of you have illegal drivers, gardeners, whoever. If they're illegal in your business, they need to go. He said the next thing he was asking them to do is to create jobs. He said that the fundamental issue with South Africa is there weren't enough jobs. He said many capitalists could easily invest in the country, upskill individuals, create more jobs for others in order to make the economy as a whole more competitive. And in the process, they could do the third thing he asked for, and that was upskill people. He said, turn your business into a training center and upskill people. So Gayton McKenzie actually laid out why he was asking individuals to do this. And he said South Africa had already escaped two near catastrophic events. Those being the first, obviously at the end of apartheid when Chris Hani died, which could have landed up in civil war. And the second, he said, was, well, actually the Durban riots, which could have easily gone into civil war. He said at that point in time, the state had lost control over law enforcement. And so it was only by luck that we managed to regain control over this and avert catastrophe in the country. And he said all of the issues were being fundamentally led by one issue, and that was lack of jobs and opportunity and upward mobility. So he said if all the capitalists in the room wanted to improve the living standards of everybody and avoid catastrophe, that's what they needed to do, create jobs, nothing more. Now, very interesting enough, some individuals do what individuals in those circumstances tend to do, and that's want to write a check and give it to Gayton, the PA, if you will. And Gayton said, I don't want your money. Keep your money, I've got enough of it of my own. He said that the biggest problem he had is that when people gave him money, actually what they wanted to do is outsource their responsibilities to political parties. And he said, don't trust political parties, don't trust politicians. They're not your solution. They will not fix all your problems. You do need to take some responsibility for your own problems and begin to fix things yourself. So if you see a pothole in your street, rather than relying on the municipality, which may never come, try fix it yourself. Now, I hear what you're going to say, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to go, yeah, but what am I paying tax for? Yeah, I hear you, but that's not the point. The point is he's saying that these individuals have money, they have means, and they should be doing things in order to improve their surroundings and uplift the state. So following that event, Gayton went off to a black tie dinner, which was obviously in honor of the PA. This was obviously the PA's executive. The next day, Gayton McKenzie appeared with Kenny Kunene at Nelson Mandela Bay in order to, well, do the PA rally. Now, I must say, I did actually attend the rally with Ronaldo Thos, and both of us reported at the event, but it was very curious to actually see how they run. It was very interesting to see the amounts of individuals that had to be bussed in, the food queues, the merchandise queues, and the overall organization that goes into creating an event of that caliber. And I must say that actually the PA did very well. With that being said, the biggest problem that they generally tended to have were things like queues. So queues getting into the building with people checking bags, checking for weapons, bombs, explosives, were very long. And Nelson Mandela Bay's roads are rather small, so to actually get buses in and out of the stadium seemed to take a very long time, with logistical activities around that being very limited. Now, one of the problems that Gayton did tend to have is that actually by the time he arrived at the stadium it was near on nightfall, and the buses run quite early in Nelson Mandela Bay. So people were having to leave the stadium as he was getting prepared to actually talk or address the stadium. And so what's interesting about that is I actually have the footage of the stadium prior to him arriving, and this is what it looked like. Now, interestingly enough, you will see that there's a section at the back of the stage, which obviously had nobody in, and that's because they had obviously all their promotional material up there. And that's obviously where the stage was. You can't house people behind the speakers. People in front of the stage, obviously the stadium as a whole, was actually very full. Obviously you can see gaps here and there, but that's people going out to get food. The food queues were astronomically off the charts, and the queues for merchandise were off the charts. But Rob Gersoff was there, and I did join Rob, and Rob had this to say.
So I'm here, I don't know if you can hear the noise, but I'm actually at the PA Day with Rob Gersoff. This is the big day for Patriotic Alliance and Gayton McKenzie in a full stadium. So we're here at the PA event, the events in Nelson Mandela Bay, and here's the stadium. Let me know what you think in the comment section.
So when he buys in events, don't worry about things. Don't stress out, you know. The obstacle is the way, it's the stoic description. But Amahande is the let's kick illegal foreigners out. And those are the two things on their t-shirts. So, and they're two important parts of the Patriotic Alliance philosophy.
Eventually, though, Gayton did actually make his appearance at the event, and you can obviously see Gayton coming out to greet the crowd here.
People of Nelson Mandela Bay have all come together. Welcome, Gayton McKenzie.
After taking a few laps around the building, this is obviously at the point where a lot of people looked at their watches and thought, sure, it's getting late. We need to get off before the buses leave, which is unfortunate because it did mean that by the time Gayton actually did his full speech, the stadium wasn't as full as it was when he arrived and they greeted him. The greeting that Gayton got was quite off the charts. He was very well liked with the audience chanting his name, chanting his slogans, and really going nuts for the guy. Must admit, the stadium really, really liked Gayton McKenzie. So, Gayton McKenzie's speech. I did manage to get on the stage when Gayton was there taking the national anthem, and I was very close to the minister, and I would like to say thank you, Minister, for allowing me to cover your event. With that being said, Gayton then went on to give a very, very interesting speech, and you can let me know what you think of the speech in the comment section below. So what he actually said is that Gayton McKenzie says he's a peace-loving person. He wants to work with everybody. A lot of individuals criticize him for xenophobic remarks. But he does say what people tend to forget is that he's against the illegal foreigner. And it's the illegal foreigner who's in the country illegally committing a crime, who generally get involved in crimes, selling drugs, and overall degrading in the quality of the state. And he says those individuals need to leave, because inevitably many of those individuals are not constructive members of society and do end up getting involved in crime. So he further went on to say that actually if he was president, he would adopt a type of criminal strategy similar to Bukele, who managed to make one of the most dangerous countries in South America, the safest country in South America, by going really, really hard on criminals. And he says the biggest problem South Africa has was crime, and we're too lenient on crime. So he says, how exactly would he be able to solve crime? And he says, well, ultimately, it's not through coalitions. He did say at the previous event, the evening before, that actually, if you really look at it, the GNU is the only thing that's really keeping South Africa at this point in time from collapse. Because without the GNU, it would make or pave a way for the MK party. And if the MK party took control over the country, well, you'd have property expropriated, property rights would be under threat, and that ultimately would spell the demise of the economy. He says, but coalitions as a whole in places such as Nelson Mandela Bay have not been positive. And so it's with that in mind that he's pushing for the PA to win 2026. He then went further on to talk about the refugees, that whilst he believed that there was no genocide occurring in South Africa, he said that people shouldn't actually insult the 49 South Africans that chose to resettle in the United States. He says that actually you need to speak for peace and side with individuals, even if you don't necessarily always agree with them. And with that being said, he said that actually the biggest issue as he saw it is he understood why many of these individuals would want to leave, especially when individuals could sing songs such as kill the Boer, kill the farmer. And he said as far as he's concerned, by the time we come through to the next election, he wants to create a country where the song is no longer acceptable. He said to white individuals, this is your country as much as mine, and that you yourselves shouldn't actually have to send your kids abroad in order for them to thrive. Your kids should be allowed to live in peace and be able to work in the country of their birth. He says as far as he was concerned that whilst he is part of the government, he does believe that the times to cut the chains of racism is, well, now we need to end racism and people should no longer be considered as black, white, Indian or colored. He finally said people have claimed that he's been very soft on Cyril Ramaphosa, but he says it's not that necessarily he loves Cyril Ramaphosa, he just really respects the office of the president. And he says the office of the president deserves a degree of, well, respect. And Cyril happens to occupy that office. Were Helen Zille to occupy the office, he says he would be equally as respectful. Though he did say if Julius Malema occupied it, he'd resign and leave the country. In any case, those were all the things that Gayton McKenzie had to say. And I must admit, it was a very interesting event. Now, just to prove how many individuals left the event early, I actually recorded it myself. You can have a watch here. As you can see, a lot of people were leaving because, well, bus transport to Nelson Mandela Bay is, well, difficult at best. And anybody who would question whether or not Gayton actually managed to fill the stadium, well, I was there. Actually, Gayton did a very good job. So from my personal opinion, I can see the PA becoming quite a political force, both in Nelson Mandela Bay and, well, the rest of the country. But you can let me know what you think of Gayton McKenzie's comments in the comment section below. Until next time, bye.